Today we will be looking at some passages from the Path of Purification, which is a post-canonical text by Buddhaghosa. In this book, Buddhaghosa synthesized many teachings and stories from the suttas, from the commentary, and from the preceding 100 years of traditions. At that time, it was said that Buddhism was in a lot of trouble because of illness and war. There had been a decline in the quality of the Bhikkhu Sangha. And at the same time, the new schools of Buddhism were starting up in the northern parts of India. So we credit Buddhaghosa with saving the Theravada school of Buddhism by all the work he did in gathering up all of the early texts, getting them retranslated into the Pali language and having them saved, as well as collecting the commentaries. It's not as well known as the suttas, but you will very often hear Dhamma teachers using similes or teaching stories that come from the Visuddhimagga. And to me, I feel more relaxed when I recognize, oh, I know where they got that story. So now I'm going to share the chapter with you. If you're interested in looking into this book a little bit more after the class, you can find the link, and you can very easily get a online digital version of it. It's also very easy to get a hardbound copy. It's quite a popular book. I'm going to start right in and reading selections from chapter 9 of the Path of Purification, which is about the Divine Abidings, or the Brahma Vihara. The 4 divine abidings were mentioned next to the recollections as meditation subjects. The recollections are Chaganusati, recollection of generosity or relinquishment, Marananusati, a recollection of death, recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, right? And the recollection of the divine abidings. So that's what he's referring to here as the recollections. The divine abidings are loving kindness, compassion, gladness, and equanimity. A meditator who wants to develop firstly loving kindness among these, if he is a beginner, should sever the impediments and learn the meditation subject. Then, when he has done the work connected with the meal and got rid of any dizziness due to it, he should seat himself comfortably in a well-prepared seat in a secluded place. To start with, he should review the danger in hate and the advantage in patience. Why? Because hate has to be abandoned, and patience attained in the development of this meditation subject. And he cannot abandon unseen dangers and attain unknown advantages. Now, the danger in hate should be seen in accordance with the suttas, such as this. Friends, when a man hates, is a prey to hate, and his mind is obsessed by hate, he kills living things, and so on. And now the editor has very kindly given a reference so that if you know how to look up references, you could find the sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. Buddhaghosa goes on, the advantage in patience should be understood according to the suttas as these. No higher rule, the Buddhas say, than patience, and no nibbana higher than forbearance, in the Dhammapada. And another Dhammapada verse, patience in force, in strong array, 'tis him I call a Brahmin. no greater thing exists than patience. I want to pause here for a second and see if anybody can answer and tell me how patience is a prerequisite for loving kindness.
I feel like the word patient, it means you calm. It gives the expression of you be calm. So how you be calm? You do meditation and for a long time, and then you get that calmness. So you be patient for whatever action from the other come to you. If someone, lift the hand, want to hit you, you will stand still and, okay, if you want to hit me, you can hit me, something like that. That's how I feel. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's come from the develop of training self with meditation, and the calmness had created the patience. That's how I think that's what it is.
Thank you.
If one is impatient, I just think about when I realize I'm being patient, if something's happening, there may be a cause for irritation or anger to come up. But if I'm patient, then things could be taking a long time or not working out or whatever it is that's happening. And then anger doesn't arise, irritation doesn't arise, restlessness does not arise. And one is calm and peaceful. So developing a mind that they call it, Kanti is often translated as patient endurance. So to be able to be with, I think more be at peace and to be just with whatever is going on would be one way to describe patience.
Thank you.
So if you aren't patient, you're because the antithesis of loving kindness, actually.
Diane, what is your idea?
Oh, well, if you're patient, it's like slowing down your reaction. If you habitually react to something that you don't like, often it will be unwholesome. But if you're patient, if you have that endurance, if you wait a little bit, that reaction can die down. And it could dissolve completely, or you would have time to think of how to address something wisely, not habitually.
Thank you. Now I'm going to call on Patipada.
The human conditioning process creates emotional responses. And as we continue in life, those emotional responses are linked to a lot of different types of experiences. Patience to me is about recognizing being in the present moment 100%. Because if we're not, we can be hijacked by that conditioning and have all sorts of emotions triggered. So the patience to me is about being in the here and now and forgetting about and leaving aside the past conditioning.
Thank you. These are all wonderful observations. I'm going to add a thought of my own, and that is particularly in connection with metta, that patience overcomes both the near enemy and the far enemy of metta. So the opposite of metta is hatred. So if you hate something, you're not patient with it, you want to get rid of it. And then the near enemy of metta is greed or attached love. If you love someone, you want them. or if you love something, you want it. And that wanting creates a different kind of impatience, instability, because you want to reach out and get it. And then if you got what you love, or if you get the person that you love and you're over attached to them, then you feel insecure because they might leave you. And so that kind of greedy love is a big source of impatience, as well, obviously, more obviously, that hatred causes impatience. So I'm going to go on with reading. Thereupon, he should embark upon development of loving kindness for the purpose of secluding the mind from hate, seen as a danger, and introducing it to patience, seen as an advantage. But when he begins, he must know that some persons are the wrong sort at the very beginning, and loving kindness should be developed towards certain kinds of persons, not towards certain other kinds at first. For loving kindness should not be developed at first towards the following 4 kinds of persons: an antipathetic person, a very dearly loved person, a neutral person, and a hostile person. So it should not be developed specifically. Also, it should not be developed specifically toward the opposite sex, and in more modern terms, towards the person of the sex or gender with whom you would enjoy having a romantic or sexual relationship, and not toward a dead person. What is the reason it should not be developed towards an antipathetic person and the others? To put an antipathetic person in a dear one's place is fatiguing. To put a very dearly loved friend in a neutral person's place is fatiguing. And if the slightest mischance befalls the friend, he feels like weeping. To put a neutral person in a respected one's or a dear one's place is fatiguing. And then anger springs up in him if he recollects a hostile person. That is why it should not be developed at first towards an antipathetic person and the rest. So what he's pointing out here is the danger in the different kinds of emotional reactions that we can have towards different kinds of people. So I think when he says a very dear person, he's meaning the person towards whom you have some kind of like attached affection. And he's separating that from the teacher for whom one has a more pure kind of appreciation and admiration.
I also heard that list with someone you might be sexually attracted to, and that's the gender thing, but specifically not to confuse someone that you would feel is dear, but you're actually feeling sexually attracted to.
And also this is just at first. So afterwards, after you've learned how to do this practice, then you can definitely offer practice with loving kindness toward your spouse or towards your partner, as well as towards all of these other persons. That's the point of this practice as you go through the chapter, is you're able to give loving kindness to all of them. If he develops it towards the opposite sex, lust inspired by a person springs up. And he gives the example, an elder supported by a family was asked by the friend's son, toward whom should loving kindness be developed? The elder told him towards a person one loves. He loved his own wife. Through developing loving kindness towards her, he was fighting against the wall all night. So we can use our imagination and as far as what that phrase means. But he got restlessness by thinking about his love for his wife. And then developing loving kindness towards the dead person. What he's saying is that you cannot find a sign of a dead person. And so if you develop loving kindness towards a being who's alive, then it works.
I've also heard explanation of that one is that you're wishing a person well, you're wishing for their well-being and happiness, and you might imagine that person, well, they had been alive, but they're not, they're in a different form. So maybe that's what the thing about the sign, you can't find the sign. They may be in a different realm, or how do you wish well somebody who's passed away? That's kind of really abstract. But that was part of the discussion I've heard about that discouraged with the dead person. Someone who was dear, maybe your grandmother, or somebody who's passed away. It's better to extend merit than loving kindness.
We may know in whatever form they happen to come to be, because part of the reflection we see later on is remembering that a person has in previous lifetimes, everybody you meet has at one time been your mother. And then with that reflection, you can overcome hatred and develop loving kindness. This is Karen speaking.
Thank you. Can you explain the difference between metta and dedicating merits? I'm confused by different answers I've received from different teachers. So I'd like to know your input.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Metta is leading to a meditation practice, which is a boundless practice, and which is leading to jhana. So it's a much more refined and powerful practice related to insight and providing the nutriment for awakening. Making merit is conducive towards having a happy rebirth and towards having happiness in this life and having happiness in the next life. When you do wholesome deeds, you've accumulated happiness. The natural result of doing good deeds is experiencing happiness for yourself. And then when you experience that happiness for yourself, you think of sharing it. And you've already given some good deeds to people. You get the reward of happiness, and then you give away the reward of happiness. You give it to, you want to share the happiness by the good deeds that I've done. May others also be happy. And then that's another wholesome deed that you did by sharing. Offering the merit is a wholesome deed by itself. And so it creates a sort of like a synergy or a growth of merit. But merit is pretty much, it's kind of like within the round of samsara. For someone who is having a hellish existence because of all of their previous bad karma, doing merits is conducive to happiness. It helps the person to calm down. And it's a very good preliminary practice for insight, but it's not as powerful as right view, sila. It might be within the realm of a right view because you see that all beings are born according to their karma, and you're understanding how karma works. That's kind of like merit is something that's within this realm of the operation of karma. But then developing the insight through insight meditation, developing that wisdom, and relinquishing all the attachments that are keeping you tied down to this world. All of those things are much more powerfully supported by loving kindness practice. If the person has attained nibbana, it wouldn't be relevant. But if they have been reborn as some type of a being who is close enough to the earth to be aware of you, then they might be aware that you were thinking of them and offering them merit. And then they're thinking, oh, my relative remembers me, or my friend remembers me, and they would have mudita, they would rejoice in seeing that you're doing this, having this kind thought. And that rejoicing is a merit for them. That's how it's said. This is really something that is a long tradition, not just a Buddhist tradition, but making merit is a wide cultural tradition that existed at the time. And the Buddha didn't reject it, but he also didn't emphasize it in the sutras. It's just something that's very strongly persistent because it's such a strong tradition, and it's such a strong, maybe a natural thing that a human has that when their relatives have passed away, they want them to go to a good destination. But the Buddha is inviting us to go beyond that in the teaching about loving kindness.
There's also this little bit of a refinement in the practice where if you take a being as an object, so my objective for my dear person is my deceased grandmother, it doesn't work well as well. And because like I guess that's the thing about the sign. You don't know, you're imagining somebody who's passed away. They're not, you're just imagining what they were like. And who you don't know where they are, really, unless you have psychic powers and you know, oh, there's this, yeah. So you know where they are. So I think generally wishing, I think this is what when you're broadcasting the metta to all beings, they can be included in that. But if you're taking a being as an object, like this is one of the practices, you'll take one person.
I don't want to get too hung on this point.
Yeah.
But he does say that when he refers to the sign, he's saying that you would not expect to obtain jhana by meditating on extending metta to a deceased person or a deceased being. Continuing, first of all, it should be developed only towards oneself. Doing it repeatedly thus: may I be happy and free from suffering. Or may I keep myself free from enmity, affliction, and anxiety and live happily. So this is a very strong and clear statement, which is controversial. He's saying that a beginner should first develop metta towards themselves. And let's see how he explains it. If that is so, does it not conflict with what was said in the text? For there is no mention of any development of it toward oneself in what is said in the Vibhanga. The Vibhanga, that's a part of the Abhidhamma. It says, how does the bhikkhu dwell pervading one direction with his heart filled with loving kindness, just as he would feel loving kindness on seeing a dearly beloved person. So he pervades all beings with loving kindness. And then in the Patisambhida, in what 5 ways is the mind deliverance of loving kindness practiced? With unspecified pervasion. May all beings be free from enmity, affliction, and anxiety, and live happily. May all breathing things, all who are born, all persons, all those who have a personality, be free from enmity, affliction, and anxiety, and live happily. In what is said in the Metta Sutta, in joy and safety, may all beings be joyful at heart. So doesn't this idea of giving metta to yourself conflict with these other texts? It does not conflict. This is the answer. Why not? Because that, meaning those other texts, refer to absorption. They're referring to jhana. They're referring to the boundless meditation. But this initial development towards oneself refers to making oneself an example. For even if he developed loving kindness for 100 or 1,000 years in this way, I am happy, and so on, absorption would not arise. But if he develops it in this way, I am happy, just as I want to be happy and dread pain, as I want to live and not to die, so do other beings too. Making himself the example, then desire for other beings' welfare and happiness arises in him. And this method is indicated by the Blessed One saying, I visited all quarters with my mind, nor found I any dearer than myself. Self is likewise to every other dear. Who loves himself will never harm another.
I know where that came
So Ayys Suvijjana will give the answer. How many people know what story that comes to? Does anybody know? It's Malika, right?
Yeah, Malika came to King Vicinity, and and the King Vicinity, as people who love each other, they go to the person they love and they say, well, who's the most dear to you, my darling? And she said, myself. And she said, there's no one more dear than myself to myself. And then she said, well, what about you? And he said, well, actually, that's true. That's one more dear to me than myself. So then they went to the Buddha together, and he said that what you had just recorded, visiting the 4 quarters with his mind. Find anyone any more dear. But there's another sutta. Yeah, go ahead.
But this is the this saying, and this is the entire methodology that Buddhaghosa develops is really hanging on this one story. You could say also on the story of the acrobats, where the acrobat who's holding the pole at the bottom says, I will take care of you and you take care of me. And the one at the top says, oh, no, dear sir, you take care of yourself and I'll take care of myself. And that way we both will be safe. So it's the same kind of putting oneself first. That means that the parent puts the mask on, they put the mask on themselves first,
Yes.
so that they will be safe. And then when they're safe, then they're able to take care of the child.
I think this is maybe root come from your will to see that all living things have the same suffering, So when you base on that same suffering, so you understand and you kind of like take care of your own self, and you understand. First, you understand why you have to take care of your own self. Like, okay, you get up, you have to eat, you have to feed yourself to go on for the whole day. And so on with the whole world living thing. They feed themselves too, So this could be a root of either metta or love yourself. So the radiant of love yourself, make yourself happy, the radiant of happiness will spread around. People around you see you happy. You're not a grouchy, you're not a kind of like temper, mad easily. And then you feel happy, you feel safe, you feel, present, This is kind of like, so you have to love yourself, you take care of yourself, control your whatever unpleasant mood, and, keep yourself happiness by let go whatever the anger or whatever a junk you can, that's just like you use the word junk out of your mind, clear it out. When you clear it out, someone else observe your happiness, and then maybe try to clear out the junk also. I think that's what it is.
Thank you. I'm going to try to move along a little bit so that we can get through the section that I have in mind for today. In this example, First one pervades oneself with loving kindness. Next, after that, in order to proceed easily, he can recollect such gifts, kind words, etc., as inspire love and endearment, such as the virtue, learning, etc., as inspire respect and reverence, met with in a teacher or his equivalent, or a preceptor or his equivalent, developing loving kindness towards them in the way beginning, may this good person be happy and free from suffering. With such a person, of course, one obtains absorption. And now to the point that Diane brought up this morning a little bit later, it says, if you can't develop kindness for yourself at the beginning, start with that admired Kalyanamita, or dear friend, as the first one that you start with. But if this bhikkhu does not rest content with just that much and wants to break down the barriers, he should, next after that, develop loving kindness towards a very dearly loved friend. Then towards a neutral person as a very dearly loved friend. Then towards a hostile person as a neutral. And while he does so, he should make his mind malleable and wieldy in each instance before passing on to the next. So it's saying, let's suppose you can develop loving kindness for yourself, and then try to work with taking your teacher as an object, and you're going like back and forth between your teacher and yourself until it's exactly the same. And you don't notice any reduction in the amount of care that you have for the teacher that you have for yourself. The barriers disappear. The boundary of selfishness disappears, and you just are giving the very same wish for that teacher. And then when you do that, then you compare the teacher with that very dear person. This is like your pal, or somebody who makes you laugh or smile, or your life partner or something like that. Then you try to go back and forth between that pair until there's not any hindrance or emotional reaction that's causing you to feel like love towards this person is different than love towards that person, until it all becomes just loving kindness, just the same. And then from that dearly loved friend, you go to a neutral person. And then from the neutral person, you go to the hostile person. In a certain way, the defect or the danger of each person is solved by the next person. So the danger or the obstacle to loving yourself is self-hatred. But then if your teacher is your hero, you don't hate them. So you learn you overcome hatred by thinking of your teacher. But then the danger in your teacher is that you have a certain restlessness because of attachment or greed. You want the teacher to notice you. You want the teacher to call on you. You want your teacher to give you a good mark or something like that. And so that greed is like the defilement of love for the teacher. But then when you go to the neutral person, that makes you're much more naturally equanimous towards the neutral person. And so that kind of like solves that. But then with the neutral person, it's very equanimous, but it can be too like dull or lazy. But it's sort of like the energy of the dear person like gives you good energy. And the energy you got from the dear person can help you to have enough energy for the neutral person. And then the equanimity that you have for the neutral person can help you face the hostile person. So with each one of these kinds of persons, you're sort of developing a certain strength, which you then helps you to go to the next one. That's one way of looking at it. But this is definitely the only place, if you search all of the ancient texts, it's the only place that you're going to find this particular method laid out. Last paragraph, and then I'll pause for comments. If he has no enemy, or he's the type of great man who does not perceive another as an enemy, even when that other does him harm, then he should not interest himself as follows. Now may my consciousness of loving kindness become wieldy towards has become wieldy towards a neutral person. I shall apply it to the hostile one. Rather, if you don't feel that anybody is your enemy, rather it was about one who actually has an enemy that this is recommended. So developing loving kindness towards the hostile person, you only have to do that if you have hostile people.
I just think that there are hostile people in the world, so I'd send them kindness, that may they be free from their hostility. But that's not really having an object. One is an object. So.
Yeah. This chapter goes on through many methods of getting rid of resentment, which is the great enemy for loving kindness.
Okay.
If resentment arises in him when he applies his mind to the hostile person, because he remembers the wrongs done by that person, he should get rid of resentment by entering repeatedly into the loving kindness jhana towards one of the other persons. So one can enter into jhana based on that teacher or the dear person. And then after he's emerged each time from jhana, directing loving kindness towards the resented person. So you're using meditation and the residual effect of meditation, and then bringing that momentum towards the resented person. That's method number one. Method number two, if it does not die out in spite of this effort, then let him reflect upon the saw with other figures of such kind and strive repeatedly to leave resentment behind. He should admonish himself and say, now, you who get angry, has not the Blessed One said this? Because even if bandits brutally severed limb from limb with a two-handled saw, he who entertained hate in his heart on that account would not be one who carried out my teaching. I know that some people have honestly acknowledged that they're not there yet. That they think if they were being sawed limb from limb with a two-handled saw, that they would fall into hatred. That they've not yet developed themselves to such an extent. And so then Buddhaghosa gives many other ways to overcome resentment, to overcome hatred. Here's one that I like. If the resentment still does not subside in him, since he's long been used to the slavery of defilements, then he should review the suttas that deal with the beginningless round of rebirths. Here is what is said: because it is not easy to find a being who has not formerly been your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter. Consequently, he should think about that person thus. This person, it seems, as my mother in the past, carried me in her womb for 10 months and removed from me without disgust, as if it were yellow sandalwood, my urine, excrement, spittle, snot, etc., and played with me in her lap and nourished me, carrying me on her hip. And this person, as my father, went by the goat paths and paths sat on piles, etc., to pursue the trade of merchant. And he risked his life for me by going into battle in double array, by sailing the great ocean in ships and doing other difficult things. And he nourished me by bringing back wealth by one means or another, thinking he should feed his children. And as my brother, sister, son, daughter, this person gave me such and such help, So it is unbecoming for me to harbor hate for him in my mind. So this is a reflection to do if you find persistent resentment towards somebody, or to let go of. Here's another one. If he's still unable to quench that thought in this way, then he should review the advantages of loving kindness. Now, you who have gone forth into homelessness, has it not been said by the Blessed One as follows? Because when the mind deliverance of loving kindness is cultivated, developed, much practiced, made a vehicle, made the foundation, established. This is the deliverance of the mind, Cheto Vimutti, the metta Cheto Vimutti, the deliverance of the mind or of the heart by means of metta. That does not mean the full enlightenment, but it does mean a sublime, wonderful state of meditation, which is then providing the foundation to make the mind wieldy and pure and capable of developing insight and going onwards in this path. So that's what he's referring to. These 11 blessings can be expected. What are the 11? A man sleeps in comfort, wakes in comfort, and dreams no evil dreams. She is dear to human beings. He is dear to non-human beings. Deities guard her. Fire, poison, and weapons do not affect him. Her mind is easily concentrated. The expression on the face is serene. She dies unconfused if he penetrates no higher. So this is in the book of 11s of the Anguttara Nikaya, the 11 benefits of loving kindness. And again, a person who's a beginner who has not yet really found out how to do this practice, perhaps doesn't yet know how to do jhana. If when they try to practice meditation, some people go for years and they experience a lot of hindrances. So the meditation is difficult, and yet they persist and make the effort to stay with the object and keep coming back to the object, even though they may not even feel like they're getting that much benefit from it, but they persist and make the effort. And yet it's a question about keeping the motivation. So it is like promised that these benefits await if we continue, despite all the difficulties, to make the effort to try to develop the loving kindness meditation and to try to develop it to the point of jhana meditation or deeper meditation. And then if he's unable to stop in this way, he should try by resolution into elements. How? You who have gone forth into homelessness, when you are angry with someone, what is it you are angry with? Is it the head hairs you are angry with? The body hairs? The nails? The teeth? The skin? Or is it the urine you're angry with? Or alternatively, is it the earth element in the head hairs that you're angry with? Is it the water element, the fire element? Or is it the air element you are angry with? Or among the 5 aggregates are the 12 bases, are the 18 elements, with respect to which of these that this venerable one is called by such and such a name? And then is it the materiality aggregate that you are angry with, or the feeling aggregate, or the perception aggregate, the formation aggregate, or the consciousness aggregate you are angry with? Is it the I base you are angry with, or the visible object base you are angry with, or the mind base you are angry with, or the mental object base you are angry with, or the I element you are angry with, or the visible object element, or the I consciousness element, or the mind element, or the mental object element, or the mental consciousness element you are angry with? For when he tries this resolution into elements, his anger finds no foothold, like a mustard seed on the point of an awl, or a painting painted on the air. So then, just as internally to dissolve the delusion of the self or the clinging to me and mine. You can analyze your own experience into these many components in several different ways. Then you've done this analytical meditation in your formal cushion practice, and then you go out and somebody cuts you off in traffic, and immediately the self comes back together, and your self becomes so strong, and you become selfish, and you want to get even with that other person because under the duress of something that's triggered you, all the wisdom you develop about breaking down into the elements and so on has just disappeared completely. But if you try learning how throughout the day, while you're doing ordinary like social interactions, to keep this analysis, bringing it to mind, then that's a way to dissolve anger.
Can I just say something?
Yes, I'm going to pause here and I'll invite Ayys Suvijjana to comment and then see if any others have comments or questions so far.
What you just read, when I was at Nirotaram, somebody told me that Ajahn Nandayani, who passed away last winter, I believe, but she was the abbess at Nirotaram in Chiang Mai. And somebody would come to her complaining about somebody else, and she'd start this whole thing about, well, this person is composed of 5 khandas, and the khandas are always arising and passing. Which one of the khandas are you angry at? And things like that. So she wouldn't address the issue at all. She'd just say the one that you were angry with is already arised and passed. So what's the point? Kind of. So she must have maybe got but she expressed it a little bit differently than that, but it was just focused on the khandas, and it just really helped dispel, just all the petty kind of disagreements that can happen between people. So that's very interesting. Thank you for.
Why are they putting so much emphasis on dispelling resentment and anger? Why is it so important? Okay, so,
You asked about why there's so much emphasis
yes,
on overcoming resentment and the danger that's emphasized and how it undermines our ability to practice metta. And I think first bringing yourself aware, like when you do meditation, a lot of it is just being aware of your mental states. So it's all sometimes shocking to people when they start meditating because they're not aware of how much anger, how much resentment, or if you're in this denial, to uproot the denial and just to be able to look at the existence of these unwholesome states. And then that's the point to start abandoning the unwholesome. But it's so self-destructive, not only for others. Resentment is so self-destructive, and it's a huge obstacle. So I think one thing that's really refreshing is there's this assumption that we have these unwholesome states, instead of the assumption that everybody's pure and happy and, there's something wrong with you if you have resentment or something like that. It's wrong with you, meaning like you're abnormal. So I think what we're striving is supra-normal. Is that a good word?
yes.
Going beyond what's the normal human condition and uprooting what's actually counterproductive and self-destructive.
So you're saying both that resentment is normal, not to be surprised or mortified or humiliated because resentment arises, but also to know that it's possible to really get out of it and to really become changed in a way that's like not part of the makeup anymore.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to go on reading for a while, and I'll give you a chance before we're finished. So this last one, I was so delighted to read this. I'd forgotten it was in this book. I thought I invented this method myself. If you cannot affect the resolution into elements, he should try the giving of a gift. It can be either given by himself to the other or accepted by himself from the other. If the other's livelihood is not purified and his requisites are not proper to be used, it should be given by oneself. And then, he explains it, and he gives this little verse: a gift for taming the untamed, a gift for every kind of good. Through giving gifts, do they unbend and condescend to kindly speech. At that time, I was suffering greatly from hatred. This was quite early in my time as a Buddhist. And I did a lot of work with the 5 khandhas to saying, well, if I could make, like the hatred was making my body tense, if I could make the body be relaxed, that would help to break up the hatred. If I had the perception that that person is awful, I would think about something about them that was nice, and to sort of like break up that perception, like that could be a false perception. And then part of it is the sankhara being the intention, the volitional intention. So even though my feelings were like one way, I intentionally do that person a favor. And it's amazingly effective in helping to unwind some kind of a settled animosity. Then at the conclusion, when this resentment has been completely dispelled, when his resentment towards that hostile person has been allayed, he turns his mind with loving kindness towards that person too, just as toward the one who is dear, the very dear friend and the neutral person. Then he should break down the barriers by practicing loving kindness over and over again, accomplishing mental impartiality towards the 4 persons. That is to say, himself, the dear person, the neutral person, and the hostile person. The characteristic of it is this. Suppose the person is sitting in a place with a dear, a neutral, and a hostile person, himself being the 4th. Then the bandits come to him and say, Venerables, give us a bhikkhu. Okay, so this is 4 bhikkhus. And on being asked why, they answer, so we may kill him and use the blood of his throat as an offering. Then if that bhikkhu thinks, let them take this one or this one, he has not broken down the barriers. Also, if he thinks, let them take me, but not these other 3, he has not broken down the barriers either. Why? Because he seeks the harm of him whom he wishes to be taken and seeks the welfare of the other only. It is when he does not see a single one among the 4 people to be given to the bandits and directs his mind impartially towards himself and towards the 3 people that he's broken down the barriers and access. So when you developed it to this level, this boundless level, then the sign and the access are obtained. That's referred to entering jhana meditation. Are obtained by the bhikkhu simultaneously with the breaking down of the barriers. When breaking down the barriers has been effected, he reaches absorption in the way described, similar to meditating on an earth kasina. He obtains absorption without trouble, cultivating, developing, and repeatedly practicing the same sign. Then he's giving a summary of the 4 divine abidings: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. The characteristic, loving kindness, is characterized here as promoting the aspect of welfare. Its function is to prefer welfare. It's manifested as the removal of annoyance. Its proximate cause is seeing the lovableness in beings. It succeeds when it makes ill will subside, and it fails when it produces selfish affection. That's a greedy love or a codependent love, an attached love. Compassion is characterized as promoting the aspect of allaying suffering. Its function resides in not bearing others' suffering. It manifested as non-cruelty. Its proximate cause is to see helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering. It succeeds when it makes cruelty subside, and it fails when it produces sorrow. So if you are exposed to traumatic situations and you become depressed yourself, that's not, you're not yet got a hold of the correct way of developing compassion. Gladness is characterized as gladdening, produced by others' success. Its function resides in being unenvious. It's manifested as the elimination of aversion or boredom. Its proximate cause is seeing beings' success. It succeeds when he makes aversion or boredom subside, and it fails when it produces merriment. I'm not sure about this translation. But this is a joyful state, knowing how to gladden the mind. Equanimity is characterized as promoting the aspect of neutrality towards beings. Its function is to see equality in beings. It's manifested as the quieting of resentment and approval. Its proximate cause is seeing ownership of karma. Thus, beings are the owners of their deeds. Whose is the choice by which they will become happy, or will get free from suffering, or will not fall away from the success they have reached. It succeeds when it makes resentment and approval both subside, and it fails when it produces the equanimity of unknowing. That would be called a cow's equanimity. They just are sitting there chewing their cud without a thought in their mind. And so they're not excited. They're calm, but it's dull, ignorant. It doesn't have insight. It doesn't have mindfulness and clear comprehension. So that's the near enemy of equanimity. Yeah. So equanimity fails when it produces the equanimity of unknowing, which is what worldly minded indifference of ignorance based on the household life. The general purpose of these four abidings is the bliss of insight and an excellent existence. The peculiar of each is respectively warding off ill will and the other negativities. Loving kindness has the purpose of warding off ill will. The others have the purpose of warding off cruelty, aversion, boredom, and greed. So in this way, the qualities that are warded off and prevented, that are blocked, are described in the Samma Sankappa, which we spoke about recently in this course. this right thought, which is the second step of the Noble Eightfold Path, is to have right intentions, free from those bad intentions. And so this is clearly saying the way to develop and to become fully developed in the second point of the Noble Eightfold Path is through these developments. So I'm going to stop here. And I appreciate your patient listening. And I hope that if you're not familiar with the Visuddhimagga, you might have learned from today that this can be an interesting and useful source that's got a very clear analysis of metta and also other subjects. And in the modern editions, they give a linkage to the suttas that the Buddhaghosa was using when he developed this compilation, this synthesis. So then it's possible if someone wants to look up other suttas that they can follow the references and read and reflect and ponder about the suttas that Venerable Buddhaghosa has named in this teaching. Practicing metta can be compared to joining a health club that has many different kinds of machinery. It has the walking thing and the skiing thing and the rowing machine and the weights machine and the step machine and the swimming pool. And so if you go and you'll be working all these different kinds of machines in a certain sequence guided by a coach until you become, balanced and flexible and capable in many different ways. And so in this practice of the 4 divine abidings, and each one is practiced in 208 different ways, then you've got 832 different combinations that you can do in this metta practice. And that will allow you to have the mind become wieldy and balanced and capable, so that then you will be much more capable of coming to meditation and doing whatever you like to do in any form of meditation, and as well as having the kind of strength, not whatever hindrance or danger or harm or threat or danger comes at you, you'll have the right kind of strength to deal with it, because you've got a lot of different kinds of strength. That's, I think, the benefit of this commentarial style of meditation.